Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of my every movie ranked that I saw in 2020. Like, share, subscribe, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, The Young Cynics. Check us out. I'm gonna go on to the rest of this list now. So this video, and just before we start, this video is the best half of these movies. These are all movies I would consider good, or I got some sort of enjoyment out to the number one. This is basically because I do want to talk about a couple of these films, which I have not got to talk about in great detail yet. So number 23 on my list is Sonic the Hedgehog. I feel like this movie is fascinating to me because, not because as a movie it's very straightforward, child-friendly, has some cool action scenes, like really cute comedy, and you can always get that sense that if they did not change that design of Sonic, I always have wondered what the film would have been like had they kept him as that weird, ugly demon blue thing. A lot of these movies that kind of take a fictional cartoon video game character and just you chuck him in the real world, like Smurfs. Recently they did with Tom and Jerry. He-Man. Alvin and the Chipmunks. But I think when you take those movies, there's always going to be that risk that it just gets wrapped up in the human drama because they don't have enough of a budget, or the animators were too lazy to just animate more scenes. This film actually did well. It just set up James Marsden's character. He was relatable, but it wasn't like they spent the whole movie on his like advertising executive campaign like the Smurfs. He was just a cop so he could help get Sonic from A to B. They gave him the funny nickname of the Donut King. Sonic was a cute character. Ben Schwartz did a really great job voicing him. The visual effects were fun, but I mean, the best part of this movie is Jim Carrey. He was amazing in this movie. Like, it was like straight up watching 90s Jim Carrey. He has one of my favorite movie moments of the year, which made me feel giddy with excitement watching it. This bit, I'll put it up for you.
No kidding. You're from the power company? Oh, you must know my buddy Spencer. We play softball together.
Spence. He's a good man.
But yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Number 22 was The Gentleman. The Gentleman was basically split into bits I enjoyed and bits I didn't enjoy. The bits I didn't enjoy was Matthew McConaughey and how his character felt so out of place and so boring compared to everyone else. Like, when you've got Charlie Hunnam, Henry Golding, and Hugh Grant as the other characters, and they're so colourful and wacky, and they're that Guy Ritchie sort of quality and caliber. It was so fun watching them, and then we cut back to Matthew McConaughey talking about his like really boring marijuana business, and it felt like, I think I used this metaphor to describe it. It was like having he in the movie was like having to eat your greens before dessert, which was Hugh Grant talking about he's going to whack off over Charlie Hunnam while he sleeps at night. I feel like some of the action and violence in this film was wonderfully beautiful. However, the problem is it just doesn't spend enough time on the weird, wacky, wonderful stuff. Like, half of this movie was a generic drug movie. The other half was Snatch. And the Snatch half I loved the hell out of. The other stuff, the McConaughey stuff, I didn't. 21 is Freaky. Freaky was fun. It was a little dumb. There were... basically, the only real thing this movie has going for it is Vince Vaughn as playing a 16-year-old girl or whatever. So it was really fun in that aspect. I think that compared to, say, the Happy Death Day movies, this movie didn't quite take advantage of its premise as much as I wanted it to. There was one scene which I've just got to absolutely commend Vince Vaughn on his, I guess, his sort of... God, how do I even say this? His commitment goes through the roof in one scene involving him and the girl's crush. I think you can put 2 and 2 on what happens next. I feel like the ending, though, really just deflated. It was just such a slap to the face of just boring genericness. I guess you could say that ending. It just kind of... It was what you'd expect a studio to just tack on at the ending so we can have some sort of happy ending. I really wasn't impressed by that. It's as soon as Vince Vaughn transfers his soul into the girl to the point where they, spoiler alert, switch back, that's when the movie's having fun, and I had a blast watching it. It's just that anything outside of that time period was really not interesting. Number 20 was Ammonite. I think I talked about LGBT sort of romances in the last one and how I'm always going to compare it to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I think that Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I'm going to go back to this movie a lot. Whenever I see a movie like this, I will always compare it to that. Because while you do have the similar premise, you've got two women who meet up in a time, say, pre-1900s, when, of course, women didn't have the same social status as men did. And you take that sort of forbidden romance aspect as well, and you put it in the film. However, where Portrait of a Lady on Fire had such a fascinating way of the characters getting to know each other, where she's literally got to take down and memorize the details of her face so she can paint because she doesn't like posing for people. Meanwhile, this one, you've just got a girl who's... Meanwhile, in this one, you've literally got a girl whose boyfriend is working for Kate Winslet as a rock or shell scientist, and they fall in love while he goes back to London town. I think in turn, I get that it is based on a true story. I think it was just, was this the true story we really needed to tell? And I think that, I guess this story just doesn't lend itself very well to a cinematic narrative. I think while the performances are really good, and I was surprised how, again, committed the actresses were to certain scenes, I think that the movie just had a very dull visual style, a very straightforward narrative, and just wasn't intriguing compared to other films of this nature that I have seen. Number 19 was Bill and Ted 3. It was fun. I enjoyed the daughter plot, and Bill and Ted were fun. It is very obvious that Keanu Reeves just isn't that guy anymore. Alex Winter was great. There were moments where the film's extremely low budget showed through, but I think on the whole, it's a Bill and Ted movie. While not being the same caliber of those first two films, it was still a fun time that we had during it. Next one's The Hunt. Beautifully violent. Genuinely interesting story in the way it unfolded. I just think that the action scenes is what you're there for. If you want to have a good time where you watch gore, blood, guts, and a kind of interesting political commentary on America, I think it's something that you might get a kick out of. I really love the final fight between the main character, and I guess the film does treat its big bad as kind of a surprise as to who the actor is playing it, so I guess I won't spoil it for you, but it is a really, really well done final battle, so I'd definitely say check that one out. Onward was another Pixar movie. It was fine. Chris Pratt and Tom Holland did fine. Julia Louis-Dreyfus was really good. I think that the ending was really poignant, and there was definitely interesting messages about paternal figures and brother relationships and searching for, I guess, new paternal figures. Unfortunately, it just kind of felt like a fairly straightforward, and there wasn't a lot memorable about it to distinguish it, like when you compare it to, I guess, a lot of other Pixar movies. It kind of felt like Pixar will release a massive movie in the summer, which gets all the buzz and the hype, say like an Inside Out or something, or an Incredibles. But then they'll release a movie in like late November, a la like The Good Dinosaur. This definitely felt more the caliber of The Good Dinosaur, because while it does tell a touching story, it's just something that doesn't feel very new to Disney Pixar as a whole. I didn't mind the world, like it was kind of like Bright, Netflix's Bright a few years back, but not great. Soul was good. Good animation, good story. I really like the soundtrack, the way, and the like Picasso designs of some of those characters in, I guess they call it the Great Beyond or whatever. It's just kind of that the ultimate message kind of gets flip reversed on its head in terms of, I guess, accepting fate. And also, it does get kind of heavy-handed in... I'm not saying that these movies can't get heavy-handed. It's just that for a child, which is what these Disney movies are, it just is something that it would definitely go over their heads. And it's something that they're not really going to be able to get their heads around compared to, say, Inside Out, where basically the message is that it's okay to have all of these different emotions and to grow. Meanwhile, this film was just kind of, you could die, get ready for it. Palm Springs, another one of them time loop days. Did tell an interesting sort of romance between Christina Milioti and Andy Samberg. A weird ending, which I still haven't quite wrapped my head around, and I haven't really tried to look into it too much since. But I think it does work well as that sort of... It feels like a HBO drama comedy, sort of like... It's got that same sort of tone as a show like Barry or Atlanta. Cinematography was actually really well done. I really like the look of it and the color palette of it. I like J.K. Simmons was fantastic in the movie. You know, it's not as great as, say, like Groundhog Day or even something like Edge of Tomorrow or whatever they're calling it this week. But yeah, Palm Springs was actually a really good movie. Number 14 was Tenet. Tenet is basically Christopher Nolan, unfortunately, at his worst, which is kind of... I love Christopher Nolan in general. I think everyone's talked about the sound mixing and how terrible it is, considering you've got characters talking through face masks, and then Ludwig Göransson's score, which is mixed in at like 150, whereas the dialogue maybe is put at 40%, so you cannot make out a damn thing. And considering how quickly the characters and the dialogue just moves on and on and on, the characters over the last few Nolan films have got progressively less interesting, from Interstellar to Dunkirk to this, to the point where they don't even have names. He's literally called the protagonist. Like, I liked Robert Pattinson, I liked Himesh Patel, and I really liked John David Washington. The actions were amazing, the action scenes were incredible, and the special effects work is amazing, and of course, because Christopher Nolan loves his practical effects, which is something I still absolutely commend him for. It's just that the overall plot was absolutely ridiculous at times, and just trying to keep up with it all the time, especially when you couldn't make out what they were saying half the time, so you just got lost, not because we weren't paying attention, but because we literally couldn't hear what they were saying. Number 13 was Bad Trip. I don't think I can really say much. It's a hidden camera prank movie, but I love Eric Andre. That's why it's so damn high. This movie has a scene in a gorilla enclosure which will go down in cinema history as one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Go watch it. Amazing. The King of Staten Island was number 1 for a good chunk of the year, which is kind of crazy considering now it's down at number 12. But Pete Davidson, I've been following him for a while now, basically ever since he started off at SNL. Been watching a lot of his stand-up specials, and he's just a really funny guy, and this story tells his life story, which is something I am familiar with because the guy has been through a lot, and I found that absolutely fascinating, that the fact that this is not just your normal cut and dry happy-go-lucky protagonist. He is very, very deeply flawed, and from what I was expecting out of sort of a Judd Apatow comedy, all of those expectations got subverted by a film that was really clever, really heartfelt, and the performances, especially Pete Davidson, Bill Burr, and Marissa Tomei, were absolutely fantastic. Number 11's Borat II. This movie is, of course, not as universally loved as the first one, simply because of the fact that it just takes quite a significantly heavy-handed political approach, I guess. It's definitely all about making fun of one side of the political spectrum. But I think that while there are definitely scenes where he didn't always get the intended reaction, for example, the Mike Pence scene, which he it's very obviously edited in a way where Mike Pence may have noticed he entered, but it didn't get a great reaction out of him, so they kind of had to edit it quickly to kind of almost manufacture a response at times. But there were other scenes which were unbelievably funny. The twist ending, I'm not going to say this lightly, but it is one of my favorite twists in a comedy movie ever. It was brilliant and something I did not see coming, but in the end, it made total sense. Alright, here we go. Top 10 time, baby. Number 10, Nomadland, Chloe Zhao. It is really such a fascinating film for me. So, of course, it's Frances McDormand. I've been informed by people that it's her and David Strathairn, and everyone else in the film is just an actual nomad or not an actor. I'm not exactly sure what the percentage of people in the film who are actors or actors to real people, but it's such a fascinating filmmaking technique because, of course, when you film it in sort of like a documentary way, which this very much is made to look like, well, yeah, you get people in their real candid moments. And Frances McDormand, her performance is unbelievably real. And I think that this movie, one of the most important things is just like learning about how other people appreciate life. While maybe not everyone has the exact same material possessions, they've all found their own ways to enjoy life, slow down as they kind of get to the end, I guess. And it's really learning about how to just enjoy the final days and do everything that they've wanted to do. And you see that through that nomad culture which they develop. Cinematography, this might be the best movie I've seen in ages. Some shots, beautiful landscape shots, just simple shots of Frances McDormand standing in the desert set against the beautiful sunset. Just incredible stuff. I really, really enjoyed the heck out of this film. It does get a little slow in the middle, and there are a couple of scenes which kind of just feel like they're wandering just to show off landscapes and whatever. But apart from that, just really interesting exploration of like this whole people which I don't feel like I've had much sort of interaction or exposure with. And this film was a really great way, especially in the technique that they've I guess created. They've created it doesn't so much have a running narrative, but just kind of like an exploration of these people's lives, which I just found absolutely incredible and fascinating. Number nine, Bad Education. So this is mainly, of course, Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney. Now, I think as this movie was going along, I was kind of guessing what's going on. It was like, oh, they've got something sketchy. I think as soon as the halfway point of the film happens and not so much the twist, but the revelations of what has been going on kind of come to fruition, the movie gets really far more fascinating than it was before. I love seeing how Hugh Jackman's character has been so conflicted, and I love seeing how Allison Janney's trying to deal with all of this stuff. It's a movie that I don't really want to spoil too much of, because even though it's just a simple movie about like school board members who aren't the most ethical, it does take really fascinating twists and turns with its story. Number 8, Trial of the Chicago 7. I love how this film's written. It's absolutely riveting from start to finish. Cinematography and the visual style is something that it definitely lacked. I get that they're trying to create this sort of 70s, 60s, 70s, sort of like a almost a grungy look, maybe more in the style of something like All the President's Men, where the colors aren't kind of turned down, and it is filled with great colorful characters. Sacha Baron Cohen was incredible in the film. All of the performances, I should say, were all really strong. It's just, yeah, in terms of that visual style, which is something that I always do look out for, it really did lack, but it's number 7 on the list, so it definitely stuck with me. Number 7 is Promising Young Woman. I think walking out of this film, I was very conflicted about how it ends, and I won't spoil it here because it is a film that I would absolutely recommend. Carey Mulligan gave the best performance I've ever seen her in. Haven't seen everything that she's done, but I see that people are not all fans of the way the film ends. I look at it this way. If the film had ended how everyone wanted it to end, for me personally, I thought I would have walked out of that cinema going, wow, that was a really good time, loved the ending, had a great time. And I kind of would have moved on. Meanwhile, the way the film ends in reality is something that still sticks with me today, and I still think about it, and I still contemplate, because it just feels going so against the norm when you take a sort of revenge style film like this, to have it end in such a shocking fashion the way it did. It resonates with me far more than if they went for the straight, clean ending, which I don't want to spoil. Go see Promising Young Woman, though, it's great. Number 6 was Mank. I think in the cinema it was just fascinating to finally see another David Fincher film on the big screen again. This was definitely a passion project of his to work on the movie about Citizen Kane. For me, the best part of this movie, though, is that somehow it made me gain even more of an appreciation for Citizen Kane, because learning about the writer, and I mean, it's literally just the story behind one man's writing credit, but you see that sort of take on the critique of capitalism in the 1940s, which is so fascinating. You see a guy who is finally figured out, oh my god, this is what I was born to do. This is what my whole life has been leading up to. I finally created something that is immaculate. And while this film definitely did slow down in chunks, there were some minor pacing issues. The performances were amazing. The look of the film, there's grain over it, black and white. Can't remember, it was a 4:3 aspect ratio. I'm pretty sure it was, but the way it had like little grains and pops on the screen to make it feel like it was from the 40s, absolutely fascinating. The guy who played Orson Welles as well, like, I can't remember his name right now, but it wasn't just someone doing a straight up Orson Welles impersonation, which is something that I really like. It didn't take me out of the movie at all, but Gary Oldman, absolutely fantastic. His final monologue is something, I'll tell you who I think should win Best Actor, but he's definitely the runner-up in terms of who I think would win Best Actor. Number 5 is Another Round. I talked about it earlier. Look, this film it's all about Mads Mikkelsen. He's amazing in it. The direction, the way the story is told. I think I talked about it only a couple of weeks ago in my review of it. Just the way they've painted sort of pub culture and drinking as not just a straight up negative like a lot of these movies have done. I think that the whole premise for it, I just found so fascinating, and it is really interesting to see it as a character study of 4 very distinct personalities, because I mean, it could run into the, like, problem where it's just like, oh, they're 4 teachers, this one's this one, this one's this one. They're all just wacky dudes in a comedy. No, there's like, one of them's a family man, one of them's single, one of theirs relationship is on the rocks. And you see the alcohol take different impacts on different personalities. And yeah, this film was absolutely fascinating, and I definitely recommend this one. Number 4 is Saint Maud. I'd been wanting to watch this one since I was sitting in the theater before The Lighthouse started and the trailer played up. I missed it when it came to Melbourne for the film festivals. When we finally watched it, though, it was definitely worth the wait. I think for a movie to get audible reactions out of me is just something that doesn't happen all that much. The Nightingale might have been the last time that I went at an actual scene in a film. Cinematography, the way that the story unfolds, the performances, absolutely gorgeous. Visual effects from a film like this is also really well done. It makes it feel like there are scenes where it almost looks like grand paintings that have been done through these simple visual effects from a low budget film. And the sound design, because there is a lot of torture and pain put through this film, the way that the sound design comes through in some scenes is absolutely shocking and horrifying. Number 3 is The Sound of Metal. These next 3 films are all ones which I've only seen in about the last fortnight, basically. Sound of Metal, it was Riz Ahmed, and it's legit just a drummer starts to get hearing loss, but it's that as soon as he gets to that cabin and he starts interacting with these people and he learns more about the deaf community and you are taken on this journey with him. This is a movie that almost had me in tears at one scene. I think that Riz Ahmed's, I think that just some of those scenes where he is just so broken because his profession, his whole life, relies on the use of his ears. And there are great moments where it's using that sound or using sign language to really communicate these powerful moments where in some other movies they'd be screaming at each other. I think, yeah, it had a really profound impact on me. Like, at the very end, the final minute of this film is so incredibly powerful simply because the journey that he's been on and the both emotional and physical torture that he's been put through, all to get to this moment, and just to see where it's gone. I think that this movie is, it could have fallen down a very easy trap of just being a movie where a guy is introduced to a community and all of a sudden falls in love. Like, I was picturing like the super Hollywood version of this, where he goes through, he'll get his surgery done, and he'll come back and start playing, but then in the end he'll make the choice to go back and live with the people happily ever after. But there are scenes where it takes very sort of clear subversions of those very obvious Hollywood tropes, because it's telling such a real story, and you see moments where you as a person are putting yourself in that character's shoes. Would I make this decision? And you're saying to yourself, well, of course I would. Who wouldn't? But you see the connections he makes and how that affects him. Sound of Metal, absolutely amazing movie. Number 2, The Father. Anthony Hopkins delivers one of the greatest performances of his life. I honestly think he might have just outdone Silence of the Lambs on this one. He is mesmerizing start to finish. I think, for me, what was so profound about this is the movie, of course, if you've heard about it, you'll know that it basically gives you an idea of what it's like for a person with dementia, with Alzheimer's. And I think it's that emotional breakthrough. You see, I think it's something that happens a lot, where you talk to an older person and you say, do you remember this thing, for example? And then they will tell you, yeah, sure. And you can see on the inside that no, they don't. And this movie really hits home on just the complete breakdown of one's psyche as they get to that stage in their life. I think it just really keeps fucking around with you, the story, because it is literally meant to be a simulation of what it's like to be stuck with this disease. Anthony Hopkins gives some amazing moments of just acting his ass off in this film. Olivia Colman was really great in it too, but I think that just the way the film ends and the way that the story keeps unfolding and twisting and turning, it's not done through a straightforward, it's not meant to be some sort of replicated narrative. It's meant to be an actual showing of what it's like to live like this, and it really makes you feel just so sad, and it's just, yeah, it is just a really terrible and emotionally gut-wrenching movie. Number one is Minari. This film for me is something that I could just completely relate to. I think I haven't related to a movie this much since I saw The Farewell in 2019. You can see the way that these other cultures, so of course it's Stephen Yeun takes his family into basically a small town America, start a new life, and you see the struggles that they go through, and the child actors are amazing in this film. Stephen Yeun is absolutely great, as is his wife. I think what's so fascinating about this film is watching that relationship be fostered between children and grandparents, especially when they've been estranged and not seen each other for such a long time. The movie also does such a great job of establishing little things that stick in the back of your head, and when you start to realize something's about to happen, you just go, oh no. It tells this absolutely fascinating look at learning about new cultures or trying to integrate into a new society, as it were, the family struggles. It's quite a heartbreaking movie, but at the end of the day, I think the reason that this is number one on the list is just, for me, on a personal level, I could just so clearly relate to so many of the themes and messages being communicated. It is a beautiful looking film. It's a beautifully written film. The acting is absolutely perfect. So that's my number one movie of 2020, Minari. So what did you guys think? Let's give me your top 5 best and your top 5 worst of 2020. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to The Young Cynics. It's been fun just talking to you guys for, about an hour now. So I'll see you next time.